Fusing two different foods can be extremely dangerous. On one hand, you might create a seamless fusion that has the traits of both dishes represented perfectly, like the cronut. But on the other hand, you could end up with an abomination like the sushi pizza. What the f is that? That isn't sushi pizza. Where's the cheese? Where's the pepperoni? That's just adopted sushi. So today, we will be taking the iconic, legendary shoyu ramen and combining it with the lesser known but equally incredible Colombian Sancocho in a way that doesn't embarrass Japan, Colombia, or myself. Let's get started. Now we all know what ramen is, but what about Sancocho? This is a staple in South American households, and every single country down there seems to have their own version of it. It's a rustic stew made of chicken or beef, and it can be cooked in about 45 minutes. It's one of the most legitimate comfort foods in the world, and it's perfect to fuse with ramen because of how similar they start off. The prep for this can be really simple, but there's a few pretty cool little tricks to make it better. Let's begin with the corn. We're gonna remove the leaves until there's only a few left, and then the trick is to grab half of these hairs in each hand and pull it apart to get most of them out in one shot. Then a little rub down is going to get rid of the stragglers. Now, we want to leave the corn mostly whole, because if you cut it too much now, it's going to end up releasing way too much corn flavor into the dish, and this is all about balance. Now, there's a lot of ways to peel potatoes, but this is my favorite. You make a long peel all the way around, and this is going to make it a lot easier to control the next cuts and giving you these really nice faceted potatoes. For the plantain, we're just going to give it a quick bar mitzvah, and then if you grab just the tip of the blade, you can cut through only the peel, protecting the little innocent banana inside. Then we're going to score that banana and rip off the sections that we need. This is going to make the final dish still contain some of those rustic elements of the Sancocho, which would be lost if we had perfect cuts for everything. Then we got this thing, the yucca or cassava. They're usually massive, and even this one's just like a medium-sized one. And if you haven't had it before, its texture's kind of like a potato mixed with a stick. Very starchy and delicious. We're just going to break these down into slivers and then even smaller by hand, just like the plantain, to give it that rustic feel. Okay, on to the broth. Now the Japanese ingredients in here are going to be pretty flavorful, so in order to compete, we're going to be adding the chicken cube, but just half a cube because of how strong it is. Then top that off with some nice clean water, and we're also going to add in one whole halved onion for sweetness. This is going to simmer for 15 minutes by itself, and then you have to take the scum off. If you don't, it's going to go back into the soup and never be seen again. Now that the chicken has had a head start, we're going to be adding the rest of the ingredients in order of how long they take to cook. This is really going to depend on how big the pieces are, so just use your understanding of vegetables and physics and time and shit to guess which ones go first. It's not that important. I went with the potatoes first, 15 minutes later the yucca, then the corn, then the plantain. I feel like this onion has already done its job, so I'm going to get it out of here before it turns into mush. So if we stopped right here and added some cilantro, we would basically have a Sancocho. So this is the point we're going to deviate into ramen territory. And for that, we're going to need to make a much richer broth out of this chicken. We're going to do this by removing all of the ingredients and setting them aside so they remain perfectly cooked. With the chicken, we're going to remove the meat we need for the ramen. I'm only going to remove the breast and the thigh, however, I could take out more and replace it with chicken feet if I wanted. The rest is going back into the broth where it'll cook for an additional 10 hours and turn that broth into liquid chicken. And as you can see, when I pull this out, this chicken has completely turned to mush, but in return, it's made us a delicious, thick chicken bone broth. And after a final strain, we can see that the broth much more resembles a ramen broth. Now it's time to make the soy sauce egg, the literal best part of any ramen. But before we boil them, we're gonna need to poke a hole at the bottom using this bar pick to avoid the hideous egg dimple. This allows it to fill up that gap and make a perfectly round egg. Now we can boil these for 6 minutes while we prepare the tare. For this, we take some soy sauce and some kombu and we bring it to a simmer. Then after 10 minutes, we add in some bonito flakes, and that's it. That's the marinade. The eggs then get peeled in water to make the shell much easier to remove, and then they get completely covered in the cool tare and topped with a neatly folded paper towel. This is going to allow the soy sauce to completely cover the egg for a nice even stain. This one came out a little wonky, so we're going to cut it open and see how we did. Oh yeah, look at that gooiness. This is the perfect amount of time, 6 minutes, 30 seconds. After marinating, we can see the paper towel did a really great job of covering the egg. Now when we cut it open, we can see the beautiful goopification of the yolk. It's become much more jammy and gooey. This next topping is super cool, and it's something that will help us match some of the intense flavors from the Japanese ingredients. We're gonna take some cilantro and some oil and blend it together, which will make a bright cilantro oil that could be strained out for later. And finally, our last component, the noodles. The only advice I can give you is to make sure you cook these in their own water and always follow the instructions on the box. This stuff is not pasta. They do not lie to you about the cook time. If it says 3 minutes, do exactly 3 minutes. And now with all of that finally done, we can move on to plating. We're gonna start off by laying down a nice assortment of our toppings. Our shoyu seasoning goes right on top of those, and then we're gonna come right over the top of those with our nice, rich chicken bone broth. The noodles then get a nice fold, making a bed for our floating toppings, starting with some chicken, a little green onion, some avocado, a perfect soy sauce egg, and the most awesome finishing touch to tie it all together, some cilantro oil. Thank you for sticking around to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed making this Sancocho ramen with me as much as I did. And if you did, consider dropping a like, maybe even a subscribe, and I hope you catch me on the next one where I'll be cooking a human being. Peace.
Oh.